Stefan Bajcetic has been reported that he won't be heading anywhere and he's going to stick around and work under Varner's slot as well. Again, no massive surprise in this, but interesting that he's now being spoken about again, really, because he was somewhat the forgotten kid.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I think I mentioned on the show that it feels like Liverpool are maybe moving away from Stefan Bajcetic, and weirdly it almost feels like he's from a past era, the Pep Linders, Jurgen Klopp era. But, it's... I remember we were speaking to Slot about it on transfer deadline day last year when his move was confirmed to Salzburg, and he was, so big on his praise for Bajcetic and basically said he is a long-term player here and, we need to get some minutes in his legs, we need to get him out on loan, get him a good year away from the madness of Liverpool, and then we can get another good look at him. And, as the season wore on, it almost felt like that was just something that a manager has said, but it appears though he's been true to his word and they are going to get another look at him, and it almost feels like a fresh start for him after that mixed bag. It didn't go well for him at Salzburg, did it with Pep Linders. Mm-hmm. And then by all accounts, he was had a better time at Las Palmas back in Spain. So yeah, it feels like maybe a fresh start, and he's someone who, if you look back to when he sort of broke into the team, what was it, 2.5 years ago now, he was someone who had real talent and he's still very young. So, yeah, hopefully he can kick on now. Yeah,
I'm a big fan. I think we all were, weren't we, from what we got to see of him. And it has been an indifferent time since. I think a lot of that is due to some decisions maybe in terms of where we did go. Injuries clearly haven't helped either. So, fingers crossed he's free of all that now. We're going to have a decent run at playing footy again because, again, innately brilliant footballer. Right, Kostas Tsimikas, we still need to talk about him. Roma, the latest club linked. This one to me, but again, not in the squad at all, match day Monday. This to me just feels like something. I've been so against the idea of loaning him out, but we are now getting into the final hours of the transfer window, really. Yeah. There has to be some sort of solution for Kostas somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make sense for Liverpool to keep a third left back waiting in the wings, would it? Even if you think of him as maybe an absolute last choice emergency centre back. Roma, I think, by all accounts, it feels as though Roma are looking to let it drag on and try and get him on loan and take him then and get a proper look at him as opposed to paying the money. Liverpool hadn't really been looking to loan him, but that was the message sort of maybe 2.5 weeks ago now, maybe 3 weeks nearly. So no further along in getting a fee for him, so they might be forced into that loan. And then hopefully performs well at Roma and they can maybe recoup what they paid for him 5 years ago, which would be 6, obviously, by the end of this season. So, yeah, I mean, it benefits Liverpool slightly to send them on loan, but I do feel as though they wanted the X amount of money that they placed on him, and then he can replenish that into the kitty or whatever. But, I think the absolute last plan or the last outcome that Liverpool want on this is to have him in the squad.
Yeah, just feels.
Yeah, I mean, you're already looking to get in ahead of Kirkes, and obviously Robertson's still there, and Joe Gomez can play there if absolute needs be. So, keeping Tsimikas around just because you can't get a permanent buyer at this stage feels a little bit like you're cutting your nose off to spite your face. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Somebody who may well be sticking around, Harvey Elliott. And it hasn't felt like that all summer long, really. It felt like inevitably there would be a taker somewhere and someone would pay the necessary fee to get him over the line. However, reports this morning from our friend Lewis Steele have suggested that Harvey might be sticking around the Merseyside, which I'm not dead against. Do you think, why is probably the question, do you think people haven't turned up with the money or the suitors weren't suitable? What do you think it is? Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a breakthrough with Xavi Simons going to Tottenham. So that was always there was initial talk of Chelsea, and if they could get that deal done, then they would come back in for Harvey. So maybe that is still a goer if that deal does go through. I'd love Harvey to stay around. I think it'd be an ideal sort of alternative to Florian Wirtz in that number 10 position, but a lot of it depends on what he wants. I don't know, we spoke out in Hong Kong about wanting to stake a claim for England with the World Cup coming next summer, but it was always sort of once Xavi Simon's future had been resolved, then we would wait and see what happened with RB Leipzig. So I think we might be heading towards a resolution on that one, and maybe that does mean that Harvey eventually moves on. So yeah, I hope not, but we'll see over the weekend if that does happen. Obviously, he hasn't played too much under Arne Slot at all, has he? So he will be looking to play a lot more this season, and it's just a case of whether that is going to be at Liverpool, where it's going to be tough, or maybe that move to RB Leipzig.
Yeah, I think the Leipzig move would be a good one. Again, how many English players we've seen head to the Bundesliga and really sort of light it up and sort of come out the back of it looking better than ever before. But I'm surprised there hasn't been more Premier League interest for what it's worth. I know Palace were mentioned at one point, obviously just lost Eze and maybe he was replacement there. But yeah, I thought there would have been a queue of clubs around the corners to get Harvey Elliott.
There has been one or two. I think he sees himself playing at a high level, Champions League level club, which is entirely fair enough. When you've had 6 years at Liverpool, you've played 120, 30 times or whatever it is. So I can totally understand that. I think it was possibly West Ham, who he didn't particularly fancy joining, but they were interested at one point. I'm sure others were as well. Maybe even Tottenham at a certain point. But yeah, I guess this is a case of waiting to see what happens now with Simons and that move to Tottenham, and then maybe Leipzig make their move.
Okay, interesting. Just finally, our final Discord question of this Discord question packed Journo Insight comes from Colin Harvey, and quite straightforwardly,
Everton legend.
I don't think it's that one. Listen, no, it's not that one.
Is he still with us? I'm actually not too sure.
Don't do this.
Did you know your history?
Don't do it. I don't know. Right, what is the likelihood we don't sign anybody between now and the end of the deadline? And therefore, we'll just wait until January. January
that
people.
Feels like a big roll of the dice because Liverpool already look short in their forward areas. Bringing Federico Chiesa on in the 2 games so far, he gets his moment against Bournemouth, doesn't he? And what a let-off that is. And, the song is reverberating around Anfield. But I'd be concerned if he was, your sort of plan B. You first one off the bench if it doesn't quite go to plan up front. You can't be relying on Ingamoa too much because he's going to have a lot more learning curves than sort of peaks this season, I'm sure. He's still only 16, 17, of course, this week. So, yeah, I think it does appear as though all the eggs are in the Isak basket. Not too many other names emerging as serious alternatives at this stage. So, something's going to have to give. And I suspect it might be Liverpool deciding that they're going to have to go big because it's already British transfer record territory, isn't it? So, yeah, I think they might have to at this stage because, leaving it and thinking you can do it almost a bit of a Van Dijk or no one thing, which I think they might think they can do, by the way. But if you're asking my opinion, I think they would be risking a lot to hang fire and keep the powder dry.
No, I 100% agree with that. And it's interesting, the way we've won the first 2 games in the Premier League this season have been peak wins. Chiesa comes on, as you say, gets his moment, and we all absolutely adore it. Let off is unreal. Likewise, up in St James's Park, a 16-year-old kid comes on, grabs the winner, unbelievable. But you've already, you're in miracle territory.
Yeah.
2 out of 2.
Yeah.
And you can't just keep repeating the dose of that. You'd love to, be boss if you could, but realistically, is Chiesa always going to come up with the goods and isn't Gamo? You know what I mean? So to your point, it just shows you, whilst incredible, the need for more senior options and reliable options clearly there.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, is it, for the title charges? Like you say, Liverpool have already used up 2 of their sort of season miracles. How many of them do you get a season? Not many, even for a club like Liverpool. But I asked Arne Slot on Thursday, it was, so a week ago now, is he happy with his options? And he said yes. He was, I said to him, had 6 senior internationals this time last season. Obviously, can't speak about Diogo in those terms yet. It feels a bit crass and insensitive, but the decision has been made to sell Luis Diaz for a brilliant fee. And Darwin Núñez, which made a lot more sense. But at the moment, there's been no one coming back in. Obviously, Ekitike for Núñez, I guess, but certainly no Diaz replacement. So at the moment, you've got 2 senior internationals. Chiesa, when was the last time he played for Italy? Ekitike's probably just about knocking on France's door at the moment. Ngamo is still only a kid. So it's not what it was this time last season, was it? Where you could pick any of those 6 for any given game and you'd feel confident that Liverpool had a real threat going into the game. But Slot was saying that maybe you can count Florian Wirtz as a false 9, maybe you count Jeremy Frimpong as an alternative. So if that's the case, then that makes up your 6. But I wasn't too convinced by his answer. Maybe there was a bit of kidology going on there from the manager, but it does feel like Liverpool needs someone in before 7 o'clock on Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And to the point, Ekitike missed out on the France squad again, didn't he? Which I'm in somewhat disbelief with, but still, that's not my place to say. Yeah, it's still, you mentioned Frimpong there, the currently injured right back, Jeremy Frimpong, but I'm going to be devil's advocate a little bit. I know you're not saying it, it's Slot saying it, but currently injured, you've got Mo Salah going to AFCON midway through the season. Like Florian Wirtz, who, by the way, has been quite big on saying one of the reasons that he joined Liverpool was because Arne Slot sort of convinced him that he was going to be the 10, that was his best position. So all of a sudden to include him in conversations about the forward line field, counterproductive in itself and not what we sold him. Not that that matters at this point, but you take my point. So yeah, it just feels a bit, it's a massive risk, ultimately. I must admit, I watched Jayden Danns and he was excellent the other day for the 21s. He really led the line superbly well, took some lovely touches, unfortunate to score once or twice, but I still maintain to turn to him at any point this season, certainly when it comes to Premier League or Champions League action, would be risky. And the same could be said, Paul, just to round off, the same can be said when it comes to what happens between now and the deadline. We said it earlier on about the defence, but it's almost equally, if not a bigger risk, not to do something in that department as well. Yeah.
Like we've already outlined, Giovanni Leone, the club have huge hopes for him, and they do feel that sort of two-summer search for a young centre-back has been complete now. But if he was asked to play Sunday, you'd be concerned, wouldn't you? Playing against Arsenal, top of the table, learning on the job. So that's difficult as well. But yeah, you are right. There is a shortage of front players at the moment. Jeremy Frimpong, for me, a slight alarm bell that he's played one Premier League game, picked up a hamstring injury, and is primarily a sort of speed-based player, if you like. So, that's one to keep an eye on. So yeah, Slot did say it with a straight face, but maybe he was just doing the old manager's answer because he doesn't want to make it seem as though Liverpool are crying out for a new centre forward or a new player to at least play one or two positions in that forward line. So yeah, it's a critical few days really, and I think failure maybe to do anything in either department undoes a lot of the brilliant work that's gone on already in the transfer window.
That was a clip from Journo Insight. To check out the whole show, head to redmenplus.com or click the link in the description.